Today we're going over the Appendix and Narn and Hurin. If you're new here, welcome to Heart of a Halfling, where we talk about Lord of the Rings and do some Lord of the Ring things. So let's get started. So last we left off, we were talking about Mim the dwarf and Turin and the outlaws now residing in the House of Ransom. So here in Unfinished Tales, there is a bit of a time gap. Anything from Turin coming to Bod and Dunwith and the fall of Nargothrond is mostly in the Silmarillion. There's not a ton of new information, but there is some just clips of notes and narratives, nothing that makes like a full story. So we're gonna go into the appendix and look at those bits of notes. So starting off, we have Turin now living in Amon Rûdh with Mim and the outlaws, and there is a bit of a note description about Amon Rûdh and the caves and Mim's storage. Nothing too much appurtenance. It talks about how like it's been a year without raids or alarms and everything is fine, but that the men are pretty creeped out by Mim, that he just sort of appears around corners when they're not expecting him. It's a little creepy, so they talk in whispers and hushed tones just in case Mim is listening. However, Turin is gaining the favor of Mim and is being brought into Mim's more secretive places, into his smithy and into his, more private space. And they're now talking with one another and becoming friendly and sharing lore with one another. And this is a little discouraging for the men. They don't really like it, especially Androg, who grows incredibly jealous of this. So outside of that, there's not too much to add. We have Beleg coming to Bod and Dunwith, and there's not much said about that. Just he appears suddenly among them, and Mim isn't super ecstatic about this. We do learn that Mim has a secret store of food, and Androg is seeking this out and looking out for this store of food. He finds a hidden staircase and it comes out to this flat, and he gets shot by an orc arrow, and Beleg is able to heal him and bring him back and give him strength with the lembas bread by Melion. Now, a couple of things. First, Androg was supposed to die by an arrow because he does end up picking up his own bow and arrow in defiance of Mim's curse, and so therefore this orc arrow should have killed him, fulfilling that prophecy. But Beleg is there and gives him the lembas bread and heals Androg. So this upsets Mim because the curse isn't fulfilled, but also Mim really wants that lembas bread. And he knows that he can't just go and take it from Beleg, so he devises this sneaky plan to fake an illness and hope that Beleg would give him lembas bread to heal him. But Beleg refuses to give it to him, and this sort of seals the deal for Mim. He is now very much hates Beleg. And there is something to note that in the Silmarillion, Turin is shown to refuse lembas bread because of his pride and ignorance, in my opinion. But Beleg offers him the lembas bread, and Turin's like, I'm not going to take anything from Doriath, any gifts from Doriath. And Beleg's like, well, it's not a gift for you from Doriath, it's a gift from me. And you're being kind of foolish because you have men here who are hungry, and they may want some of this bread, and you're refusing it because of your own pride. But Turin just doesn't care, and he's not going to eat it anyways. So, moving on, we have an indication in the Silmarillion that Beleg and Turin now become sort of leaders of Amon Ruth, and that they have this force kind of protecting the lands south of Teglin. We see that Turin would take anybody who would be willing to fight, but Beleg is like, no, let's not just let anybody know about Amon Ruth. And they're able to defend the land pretty well, to the point where people are like looking to Nargothrond saying, these outlaws, this small force is able to keep the orcs at bay. What can Nargothrond do with their great forces? But Ordredreth is like, nope, ain't touching this. We're staying out of it. This isn't our battle. You know, he's wanting to remain on the outside because he's taken the lead from Thingol and Melion, who are definitely, they're not touching what's happening here. They're staying out of this. However, we do learn that Ordredreth tells Turin and Beleg that, like, hey, if you need any help outside of arms, we'll help you. And that this is thought to be sort of encouraged by Thingol and Melion. We also hear an emphasis on Beleg that while he supports Turin, he doesn't always agree with Turin. Like, oftentimes he doesn't agree with Turin. And so we get this little scraps of words, a little note on this conversation between Turin and Beleg, where Turin's just like, why are you so sad? Everything's going well. We're doing great. And Beleg's like, yeah, for now, but eventually our enemies aren't going to be surprised by us. Like, we're kind of revealing our hands a little bit here. And Turin's kind of like, oh, you know, whatever, we're fine now. And Beleg's like, well, you know, maybe for another year, if we live to see it, maybe, but then what then? And he's like, Beleg's like, you know, eventually we're going to see the wrath of Angband, and we're not going to be able to leave. We're not going to be able to, you know, find better safety. And Turin's like, well, that's who we're wanting to fight. Why do we want to run away from the forces of Angband? That's who we're trying to fight. That's kind of a good thing, right? And Beleg's like, you know, if you want to be a good leader, you need to make good choices, basically. He's like, you need to seek out a better space. You know, you need money, you need food for your men, you need the numbers. He's like, where we're at right now, Amon Ruth, it's secret, and that's great, but it's only secret for a time, and we're in a completely exposed place. Eventually we're not going to be able to stay here. And Turin's like, well, I'm the captain here. This is my men, my land, and I'm going to stay here as long as I can. And I'm in the way of Morgoth getting to anybody else, so I'm not leaving, and this is just where I'm going to be. Just very prideful. And we get another little snippet of Turin saying that he wants to rule land, but just not this one. He wants to go back to Dor-lomin, that's really where his heart lies. So it's kind of like Turin's like, this is my land, and I'm going to defend it all I want, and you can't tell me otherwise. But I also want to be over there, so you're kind of right, but not really. I'm right, not you. He's just very prideful and irritates me. And we also, it's also said that Morgoth seems to be holding back in his fights. He's kind of pulling his punches a little bit because he's wanting these easy victories to build up Turin's confidence so that basically they get lazy in their fights. And now we get Androg showing Turin the inner stairs that he found. And when he shows them the stairs, this is when they're attacked by orcs, and this is where the fulfillment of curses Mim occurs, where Andral gets shot by an arrow and he dies of it. This is also where Turin gets captured by the orcs. So now, the story, the little journey of Beleg going to rescue Turin and meeting Gwyndor, there is no new information for that. Like, if you want that story, it's in the Silmarillion in its fullness. There's nothing else to add. However, we do get information on the dragon helm of Dor-lomin. So, Turin, in the Silmarillion, loses the helm, and in Nargothrond, when we have the Battle of Tumhalad, when he fights or encounters Glaurung, he's wearing a dwarf mask that was given to Nargothrond, but nobody could wear it because they're elves, so he wears it. However, there are notes that Tolkien's intention looked to be that Turin was supposed to have the dragon helm at Nargothrond, and even have it when he finally kills Glaurung. However, the way that the helm would have had to been able to get from like point A to point B wasn't really fleshed out very well. Basically, Turin, when he was captured by the orcs would have had to have gone and gotten the dragon helm and taken it with them when they kidnapped Turin. And then when Beleg and Gwyndor rescued Turin, they would have had to have gotten the helm and give it to Turin. And so that was never really fleshed out. So basically, the helm just kind of gets lost in the destruction of Amon Ruth. But there is a little note where if Turin had the dragon helm when he encountered Glaurung, and how that would have gone. And basically, everyone would have been scared of Turin because of this helm, including Glaurung, to the point where Glaurung is now trying to manipulate Turin into taking it off because he's frightened of it. And so he tells Turin that he sees that Turin claims to be a vessel and a retainer of his master's likeness, of a dragon, because there's a dragon helm or dragon on his helm. And Turin's like, no, you're lying and you know it. I have this dragon on my helm to show that I'm going to kill you. I'm your master, and that I'm going to be your doom. And Glaurung's like, well, then I need a new master, because I'm not afraid of you. In fact, it seems to be the other way around, that you're afraid of me because you have yet to look at me. And this shows to be true, that Turin's visor on his helm has been down this whole time, and that he has refused to look at Glaurung, but instead looks at his feet instead. So there's that little interesting note. And another place we see that Morwen hears in Doriath that the dragon helm has appeared in Nargothrond, and now realizes that Mormigel is Turin, her son. And so we have that being the reason that she goes to Nargothrond. And then, like I said, there's the suggestion that Turin was wearing the helm when he slew Glaurung in the end, but there's no notes or indication on how that would have come about. So now we have the situation between Gwyndor and Turin. So Beleg is now dead because of Turin's impulsive choices. So Gwyndor, we see in the Silmarillion that he's not a huge fan of Turin and his policies. And we have a little bit of note that kind of expands on this a bit. And we have Gwyndor saying, like, I've been in Angband. I know what is Morgoth's intent. He's allowing for these small victories so that he can learn who are the stronger forces, who he actually needs to focus in on. And that really our hope can only lie in the Valar. And so Turin says the Valar, the ones who have forgotten about you, who have left you, the only Vala that we need to worry about is Morgoth. And victory is a victory. Whether it's big or small, it's still a victory. If we can even make a small dent in Morgoth, that's worth something. And if you're so concerned about the Valar, then go to them. Go to the seas. Go out there. What good are they going to do if they're there and we're here, kind of thing. And he says that any small attack is worth making, and that they're going to fight against Morgoth, and it'll be history. And even Morgoth and Manwë can't unwrite history. Well, Gwyndor is like, you speak as one who has been in the presence of the Eldar, but you need to be real careful when you start comparing and joining Morgoth with Manwë. They are not the same. The Valar have the intention of protecting the children of Ilúvatar, and that's not Morgoth's intent. And he says, we have Círdan in the south building ships, but what do you know of ships? All you think about is your own glory and what you want. Is like, should we really continue to put people out to die just for the sake of dying? And Turin says, well, then send them to your ships then. If you don't want them to be in the fight, go send them south. Go send them to the ships. And Gwyndor's like, they're not going to leave us, for one. And two, Círdan can't support that many people. Like, you need to be smart about this. And Turin's like, well, I've given you my answer. I don't know what else to tell you. I'm going to fight. The men are going to fight. We're going to hold our borders. And that's just what we're going to do. The women of the Edain, they're not holding their men back. Why are you trying to hold everybody else back from fighting? And Gwyndor is like, well, just because they fought doesn't mean that they didn't lose something. Like, they suffered from the war, and maybe they wouldn't have suffered so much if they didn't keep sending their men out to fight. So Turin's mindset's definitely very much of, men have a short amount of time, and they're going to use that short amount of time to fight. They don't have the luxury of waiting around and seeing if the Valar might come and help like the elves do. Men have shorter lives, and they're going to spend that time fighting as best they can, which in the eyes of elves is a very foolish thing to do. You shouldn't be impulsive. So now we move on, and we talk a little bit more about the love of Finduilas for Turin. So Finduilas is the daughter of Orodreth. She's a very beautiful woman. Turin, definitely enjoys being in her company. It says at first that he's only around her when Gwyndor is, but eventually she begins to seek Turin out to spend time with him. And this is very conflicting, because if you haven't gone through the Silmarillion, go back and read that and then come back to this video first off. But we learn that Gwyndor and Finduilas had a love connection, but then he gets sent, he gets captured and is in Angband for a long time, and he comes back an aged elf, which is very unusual. Like, the man's been through things. And so now that Gwyndor is back, Finduilas is conflicted. She still loves Gwyndor, but not in the manner that she should love Gwyndor. And rather, she loves Turin now. And so we have this weird love triangle going on. So she's seeking out Turin to be in his company, and Turin's enjoying it, and he's talking to her about his sister Leylaith and how beautiful she was, and how he was so sad to lose her, and that it's a grief that still sits with him. But when he's with her, that grief dims away. And he just says that, Finduilas is just so beautiful and so queenly and fair that he just doesn't think about his grief anymore. And Finduilas, shares the compliment back to him that he's very kingly, very handsome looking, but that his name does not fit him, that Agarwain doesn't really fit him, and that rather his name should be Adan Nadel, which means the secret. And Turin is kind of like, well, that's not my name, and I'm not a king because I'm a man, and the kings are of the Eldar. So now, because of this connection with Finduilas and Turin, it's upsetting Gwyndor, who was already kind of upset with Turin in the first place. And so now Gwyndor is sort of drifting away from Turin a bit. And this is bothering Turin because he enjoys Gwyndor's company. He's a counselor, a healer. Like, he wants Gwyndor to be happy. And he doesn't really understand why he's not. Especially in the beauty of Finduilas, he should be much happier. And he's also saying that Finduilas is struggling as well, that she's upset. But Turin, who's an idiot, thinks that this is because Gwyndor is telling Finduilas depressing things about Angband. And so this is upsetting her and scaring her. So Turin goes to Finduilas and is like, oh, don't let what Gwyndor tells you upset you. Somebody who has been through the kind of things that he has been, it changes them. Don't worry about him. Time will heal him and he'll get better. And she's like, oh, I know. And Turin's like, and Nargothrond's going to stand strong. Don't worry about what Gwyndor's saying. Nargothrond is fine. We're going to fight and everything will be okay. And Finduilas is like, well, I'm sure it will stand. I'm sure it's fine. But really, I'm concerned about your well-being and when you go off to battle. And that's what's really upsetting her. So later he goes to Gwyndor and he's like, Gwyndor, my friend, I see that you're so sad. Why are you so sad when we're in such a wonderful place and Finduilas is so beautiful? And Gwyndor just looks at him, says nothing, has a completely blank face, and Turin says, why do you look at me that way? You keep looking at me like this and I have no idea why. Have I done something to upset you? Look, I know I don't agree with everything you say, but when you don't agree, you just have to say something. Surely that can't be it. I mean, I want you to be happy. I owe you my life. I'm in your debt. I'm never gonna forget that. And Gwyndor's like, you won't. Okay. Well, even if that's the case, the things that you've done, your counsel has changed Nargothrond. It has changed how things are done here. It's changed the people here. And why should I be happy when you've taken everything from me? And Turin, the freaking just hard-head guy, is like, I don't understand what you mean. But he thinks that he's getting that Gwyndor doesn't like him being here. That's what it says, that Turin doesn't understand these words, but guesses that Gwyndor begrudged him his place in the heart and councils of the kings. Like, he's so thick-headed. So now we have Gwyndor confronting Finduilas and basically saying, like, don't fall for Turin. He's not a good man. He's not Baron. You're not Luthien. This isn't going to work out like the way you're hoping it will work out. You guys aren't going to be madly in love with one another and everything's going to work out. He will be the death of you. And Finduilas is a little upset because she's like, why are you confronting me about this? You know how I feel. I know how I feel, and you're forcing me to be in a position where I have to tell you, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. And I love Turin, but I know he's not in love with me, and that's okay. This is just a hard situation for me to be in. And Gwyndor's like, you're like, I get that, but you're not even letting him own up to the fact that he's leading you on. He's spending time with you. He's seeking you out. He's sitting a long time with you. He leaves all gleeful. Like, do you not see that he likes you as well? Like, are you just being blinded by this? And Finduilas is like, he's coming to me and spending time with me because he needs comfort. He's upset. He's grieving. You come to me for the same reason, because you need something from me. But nobody's sitting here asking what I want. What do I need? My needs need to be met too. And why are you sitting here acting like I'm being deceived by this. I know he doesn't love me. And Gwyndor is like, well, I don't mean you're not being deceived. And it's, women tend not to be deceived by these things. They tend to know if somebody loves them or not. And so he kind of apologizes. And then Finduilas is like, if any of us three have been faithless, it's been me. I don't mean to be, but it's just, I love who I love now. And she says, kind of switches the topic a little bit and goes, what about the rumors of Angband? Like, what about all the death and destruction? Like, surely Adanethel, he's a hero. He's a great man. Surely, he can keep Morgoth away. And Gwyndor's like, well, he is a proud one. And she says, and he's also merciful. And he pities, though, and cares for those that need help. But he doesn't pity me. He sees me as a mother and a queen. And while this might have been true, it's still annoying to hear. So Turin obviously doesn't know about this conversation, but he does see a change in Finduilas. And so he goes up to her, and he's being more gentle with her because he sees that she's sad, and so he's trying to be kind to her because obviously this beautiful creature can't be upset. She's too pretty for that. So Finduilas goes to him and says, why have you hidden your name from me? Surely you would have known that if you revealed who you really were, I would have still honored you. I wouldn't have thought less of you. And Turin goes, what do you mean? Who do you think I am? And she says, you're Turin, son of Hurin, Thalion, captain of the north. Well, then we get Turin going to Gwyndor and rebuking him, in the Silmarillion, saying, like, how dare you reveal who I truly am to her? Which Gwyndor is like, I didn't, you friggin' idiot. She could tell. But that's all in the Silmarillion. So moving on, there's not much added information about the Battle of Tamhalad and the destruction of Nargothrond, and even the conversation between Durin and Glaurung. It's all pretty well in the Silmarillion. There's nothing really to add to that. The last bit of information that's added is the messengers from Círdan to Nargothrond, and that's Gelmir and Armanas, which you may remember those names because they encountered Tuor when he was looking for Gondolin. So now here they are, actually fulfilling what their errand was to go to Nargothrond and warn them about the fall of Nargothrond. So they go to Ordredreth and tell them that they've been sent by Círdan, who sent them with a message from Olmo himself. And so that they've been traveling since the Dagor Bragolat. And for whatever reason, supposedly for secrecy, they went up the coast, far up the coast, and then came back down to Nargothrond. Why they did this, there's no real explanation for it. The assumption is that this was the divine plan by Olmo so that Gelmir and Armanas would meet Tuor, but there's no actual evidence of that. That's just sort of the assumption. So anyways, they're now here with Ordredreth, and they tell him hey, we have a message from Olmo, the Lord of Waters himself, warning you guys of the peril that's coming to Nargothrond. And Ordredreth is like, why then are you coming from the north? Why you're from the south, why are you coming from the north? And they say it's for secrecy purposes, and that they were told of rumors of the hidden kingdom of Turgon being up in the north, and so that's why they were going that way. But they ended up just being rumors, and they found no evidence of the hidden kingdom. And after a while, they were like, well, we should go to Nargothrond. And so Ordredreth's like, well, why are you looking for the hidden kingdom? Why are you looking for Turgon? And they say that it's because it's been told that it will be the longest standing kingdom. And this obviously upsets Orderdreth. And he's like, well, there's no information about Turgon here, and I guess you don't want to stay here for too long, so you better get going. Like, he's very upset by these words. And Gelmer's like, well, like, don't be upset. You asked us the question, so we answered it. Don't be upset with the answer that you get. And they say that when they were coming from the north, that they saw that there was a gathering of orcs, gathering in around Sauron's Isle. And Turin goes, yeah, we already know that, so you're a little late on your message there. And Gelmer's like, well, okay, fine. At least then listen to the message that Olmo gave Círdan to give to you guys. And he goes on with the message and says that the springs of Sirion have been defiled, that Olmo's power is withdrawing. He doesn't have as much, control on what's happening because of the waters, and that it would be best for the Lord of Nargothrond to shut the doors of the fortress. Put your pride aside and just huddle yourselves up close until things pass by. And Orderdreth, this kind of sits on Orderdreth a little bit. He doesn't really like what he's hearing. It scares him. And so he turns to Turin for counsel. Well, Turin doesn't trust the messengers at all. And he goes, what does Círdan know about war? He builds ships. That's what he should focus on. And leave the war in the land to us. I don't care what the Lord of Waters has to say. We're going to fight. And we're going to gather up all of our strength that we can, and we're going to fight as long as we can. And Gelmer hears this. He bows to Orderdreth and goes, well, I told you what I had to tell you, so peace. And he turns to leave. Well, Armanos turns to Turin and goes, are you of the house of Hador? And Turin is like, my name is Argarduin, the Black Sword of Nargothrond. And you really need to watch what you say. And tells him that it's probably best that he doesn't know about Turgon's secret, because clearly he would blab that secret out to everybody, and everybody in Angband would know about it. And that if a man wants to keep his name to himself, that's his choosing, and you really need to be careful about what you're saying. And if he is the son of Hurin, then if you go and blab, you better hope that it's Morgoth that cuts your tongue. And Armanos is just like, okay. He's a little upset by this and taken back. Gelmer is like, hey, look, he did not mean any offense by this. We are not going to betray you. We thought we were in, behind closed doors. We thought this was a safe place. He is not meaning any insult to this. And the only reason why Armanos probably asked this question is because Olmo seems to show favor for the house of Hador, and that Hurin and Hur, it's been said, have been to the Hidden Realm. And Turin goes, well, if that's the case, then I highly doubt that he would have told his son, his child, where the Hidden Kingdom is. So clearly Armanos isn't trying to gain information, but rather is just trying to cause trouble. And basically says that, like, he doesn't trust them and he thinks they're up to no good. Well, Armanos is like, well, I don't need you to trust me. And Gelmer mistakes me. I asked you who you were because I've met Tuor, son of Hur, and he was nothing like you. And Turin's like, well, just because I have black hair and he has golden hair, doesn't make a difference. And Armanos is like, I don't care if you have black hair and if he has golden hair. I don't care if you look like your mama or your daddy. My comment is on the fact that Tuor spoke with us with wisdom. He took our counsel. He listened. He had reverence for the Lord of Waters. You have none of that. You listen to your own wisdom. You live by your own sword. And that's what's going to be the doom of you. Be the end of you. And Turin's just like, yeah, whatever. He's like, I can't believe I have to bear the hate of Morgoth and of those around me too. He goes, so why don't you just, if you don't like me that much, why don't you just go back to your shores? So Gelmer and Armanos, they leave. And it says that, despite Turin's rudeness, they would have stayed to fight next to them. But that Círdan had told them that once they gave the message to Nargothrond, they were to report back to him on, what their response was and what they were going to do. And finally, we have Ordredreth, who's now heard all of this, and he's still very much concerned about what's going to happen, but he's putting a lot of faith in Turin, and he's only taking Turin's counsel, and that's it. That ends up being the end of Nargothrond, is Turin's rudeness and his just arrogance and pride. Like, golly, this man is such an idiot. I am sorry. I know some people really like this story, but it's so frustrating to read. It's taken me forever to get to the story because every step of the way I'm like, you're an idiot. You're like, stop. You are so dumb right now. He's so dumb. It's like, how can you be sad? Finduilas is so beautiful. Like, oh my gosh, you were so, like, he's, like, and the wild thing is that, like, Turin is very physically capable. Like, we can't deny that he's a good soldier, he's a good warrior, he's able to get out there and get the job done, no doubt. But it's given him so much arrogance, and you know what? That was Morgoth's point, right? Was pulling all the punches so that Turin would become overconfident. And that's what we're seeing here, is just this arrogance coming out of Turin, that he's not taking any wise counsel, and he's making a poor choice that ends up being the death of an entire kingdom. All because one man's arrogance. Gah. So there you have it. We went through the appendix. So when we come back, we are going to be we'll be reading The Return of Turin to Dor-lomin, which again is another idiotic scene with him, but aren't they all? So there's a pretty big gap between Mim and returning to Dor-lomin. And so most of it can be found in the Silmarillion, no surprise. There's no added information, no added note, no like discrepancies or anything like that. Just a bit of just added, like it's literally just like little snippets of added narrative that really didn't fit anywhere in like the continuous storyline. So there you go. I hope you guys enjoy this. This was interesting information. We got a little bit more on Gwyndor and his relationship with Turin and even Finduilas. We got Gelmer and Armanos, which I think is a really interesting bit of narrative. It's a shame that it's not in the Silmarillion because, I mean, I know this is part of the Legendarium. I don't deny that. But if I'm just being honest, the Silmarillion is what I consider canonical, and even that can be debated. I don't really consider this canonical because it's unfinished. So I am a little sad that Gelmer and Armanos didn't make their way into the Silmarillion, because that's kind of cool information. And you know what? No, it's probably best, because it would just make me have hated Turin even more. He's supposed to be the hero of the story, and I hate him. If you guys like Turin and want to defend him, please give me redeemable qualities of Turin. He's so frustrating. I thought that maybe this was a guy who was just told all his life that he was cursed and was bad and yada yada yada, and that's why he's making all these poor choices. But no, I'm convinced right now he is just an idiot. So please convince me otherwise, that he has some redeemable quality, because as of right now, I don't see one outside of the fact that he's good with a sword. So there you have it. Anyways, though, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope this fosters some debate and conversation, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. And of course, I hope you guys have blessed weeks, and may your homes be filled with food and cheer. Bye.